Recording in progress.
Good evening. This is the April 2026 meeting of the Chicago Computer Society, Windows, Office, and AI. We're going to start off with open forum for any questions, problems, comments, things other people might want to know that you know about. Anybody? Well, I guess we can end the meeting now.
Oh, yeah. I've had a problem with the server cutting out. I don't know what's going on today. I'm on my laptop and every once in a while the server will cut out.
What cuts out?
The server, it pops up and it says no connection, server connection lost.
That sounds like internet.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, but sometimes you got to remember when you're dealing with internet, I assume you're using Wi-Fi.
No, I'm hardwired.
You're using Ethernet?
Yep.
Okay. Then odds are it's a problem outside of your home with the internet, and only the carrier could do anything about it. If it's inside the home, with Wi-Fi in particular, it depends on the strength of the transmitter and the fact that it is not a perfect circle. So various things can interfere with the radio signal so that it can create temporary voids in getting the signal or getting it strong enough to do anything with.
But
No,
you're in a
that's
condo, aren't you, Wayne? Aren't you in a
pardon?
condo? Aren't you in a condo?
Well, I'm in a townhouse.
Oh, you have your own separate connection, not a joint
Yeah,
connection with other.
no.
Okay.
But like last night, I was trying to write something on Word, or not on Word. I was trying to write something on an email, and the thing cut out. And then, of course, you had to save the email, and then it occurred I had to open it up again, and I start typing again. All of a sudden, there's a connection again. So when I went online, the people said they'd had that problem. They actually, instead of working the putting stuff in the email, they actually do the email out on Word and then just copy the whole thing. Boom.
Well, the best thing to do there is call the service provider tech support. And
Yeah.
if they're having a service problem in an area, they'll know that almost immediately. And there's people who will be going out to where the problem's at to correct hardware infrastructure problems. However, assuming that that is not the case, they also can run diagnostics and have some idea where the problem may be located at, either inside or outside your house. And
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
might
I think
send out a tech to check from the wherever the line comes into your house all the way into your house, or in this case, a townhouse, and check the network connections. Sometimes these things can go bad, and it doesn't take much in a bad connection to cause you nightmares.
yeah,
I
I haven't had.
remember in the early days, I started out with Comcast in the late 90s, and for about until I got rid of Comcast altogether, I frequently had to have techs come out and either check and replace the line from the telephone pole to the house, and or correct cable problems within the house that I never touched.
Yeah.
And I
I
know the
have.
cats couldn't get to them to do anything, so it had to be a ghost or something.
Yeah, I haven't had problems today. This was last night, so I don't
Well,
know. It could be a lot of people are trying to
I don't
use
know
it at
about
the
your
same time.
area, but you may have had some strong winds, and strong winds can knock down limbs, let alone trees, that could interfere. I don't know if you're in your community, if the lines are underground or above ground.
Underground, underground.
Underground usually is okay, but we don't know in the case of flooding conditions that are in Illinois in particular as to what effect that could have on underground cables. Uh, Above ground, you have trees and other things. And of
Yeah.
course, you always have contractors, whether it's above or below ground, that can cause all kinds of damage and take quite a while to repair.
But this thing is sort of intermittent. It's not something that happens and and then you've lost it. It just, it's intermittent.
I understand, but generally speaking, when you're trying to create an email, you're uh, creating it on the server
Right,
of the email provider, which
right.
may or may not be your ISP. As an example, Comcast used to have email accounts, but they are divorcing themselves of that and sending all their users of their internet to Yahoo. Of course, people can turn down the Yahoo connection and find their own uh, email provider if they want to.
Well, I've got Comcast, so that's,
Well, Comcast is also the provider for Beata, who is the administrator, and she's been having troubles with them and the network because most of their people probably are gone or in the process of leaving, and they're moving area regions to Yahoo Mail as a substitute. You may not be in such an area yet. I know Beata in Lagrange does not is not in the current area where they're moving people from Comcast email to Yahoo email, and so how long that'll take, I don't know. Bert?
yeah, I've got Yahoo as well, but, and then of
Wayne,
course,
I haven't
when
had
this,
Yahoo
problems with
Mail.
Yahoo. I've had no problems with Yahoo for the most part all these
Yeah.
years, and it's
Wayne,
over
when
20.
this happens, do you try and and unpower your router and so it clears any cache or something?
I've done that, I didn't do that last night, but I've done it recently.
Well, usually you only do it at most once a week, once
Yeah,
every other week, at
Well,
least
but
once a
if
month.
you're having an issue, that's something to try and make sure it's cleared. If, maybe something's not clearing it.
Yes.
I tried doing that at night because my phone now is on the internet. So
The conversation just reminded me of something that's happened to me several times this year already. In that I also lost the internet connection and couldn't figure out what was going on. Then I would log in again and I'd have it back. And then I finally figured out that um, when I checked the internet connection, instead of it pointing to my modem, it was pointing to my printer, and I could never understand why, but it said, "Oh, you're connected to your printer." So I would have to physically, if I didn't reboot, I would have to physically change it so it wasn't pointing at the printer back to my modem. And I don't
Uh,
know if you can
question.
explain that one, but
Question. Do you know and understand in Windows or even Chrome OS how to deal with your internet connection settings? Just yes or no?
Somewhat. I know I picked the modem as the preferred connection, but other than that, no, I don't know anything
Well,
else.
I have never seen connecting to a printer unless you're using a static address in the machine that's having the problem and you have set it to the IP address of the printer. That's the only way I know of being able to be trying to talk to the printer, thinking it's the modem, because
Now,
normally your modem is something like 192.168.0.1 or 1.1,
uh-oh,
and that's the gateway
hang on.
address. You got to have the gateway address set properly.
Hello?
And then if you're most people will be using
Oh, it froze.
DHCP automatic, which is saying your device talks to the modem through the gateway to get an assigned IP address to your machine. So the
Sorry,
next question I can think of that might cause a problem like that would be, when was the last time you rebooted your computer?
well, in particular, this is a Chromebook, and
Yeah,
it's also happened to my wife a few times, and she's using a Chromebook. Um, if I could share for a moment, I'd like
go
to
ahead.
show you. Um, let me see, share.
Drew will get to you in a minute as soon as,
Yep.
Okay, can you see me?
yeah.
So I'll go down here, click on the modem,
Right.
and you can see right down. Are you able to see that?
That's the printer.
Yeah, that's a printer.
That's the
No doubt
printer.
about that.
So it connect to that and cut off my internet. So I don't
Okay.
know why
Now,
Yeah.
that's there.
for starters, you're on Wi Fi. Wi Fi will detect a printer that is wireless, meaning that it connects people's machines up via Wi-Fi connection. That's another way of doing it. But if you have a Wi-Fi and it's trying to talk to the printer, it's there's what's called a default assignment. The default assignment of each entry out there that's related to you has either no preferred connection, you have to manually select it, or you have a default setup as the automatic connection, which goes to your modem router. Now,
Uh,
I occasionally have a problem with 5 gigahertz band, which is most of what most people are using. Uh, and as a result, you have a situation at times because of where you are at versus where the modem router is at. You can have all kinds of interference and or weak signals in parts of your house, especially ranch style houses. Ranch
mhm.
style houses are spread out one level, but that usually requires either um, repeaters or slash access points, or you got to have a mesh network to cover Wi-Fi throughout the house completely. Drew?
I just wanted to mention it, Wayne, just in case yours didn't have a preferred and it was maybe swapping out. I just thought I'd
No,
throw it
with
in.
Ethernet,
Yeah,
there is no preferred. Ethernet
no,
means it is, and no
it's hard.
ifs, or
It's
ands,
hard.
or buts. I am king, and I will not let any regular interference go through. Uh, if you started up a microwave oven, Ethernet won't give a darn. Why? Usually, the twisted pairs will stop it. Number two, it will always go to the maximum speed no matter what. There is no 2.4 gigahertz, there's no 5 gigahertz, no 6 gigahertz, etc. involved whatsoever. Those are radio waves.
Yeah.
So Ethernet is like plugging straight into the ISP's own equipment. Drew?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that the Wi-Fi printer feature that he's having issues with is actually called Wi-Fi Direct, and you can print to that printer without having a Wi-Fi network. You can connect to that printer. Say you were at a trade show, that printer could connect to your phone and or laptop and print. That's why it said the word direct. It's I actually recently went to a customer's house. They were having trouble with their Wi-Fi, and when I did a scan of their Wi-Fi, I saw that the printer that they had was running on the same channel as their router. I shut the printer off, and the problem went away.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we just moved the channel of the router to a different channel.
That brings up a good thing there, Drew, that you just brought up. You had that person had collisions between the printer and your Wi-Fi router. It's like having two semis meet each other on the open highway, moving in opposite directions. Now, if you have a direct device, okay, you may have it on the same channel or close enough to the main channel you're trying to connect to with the computer. There are only so many channels within every frequency band. 2.4 has only 11 channels. A band has many, many more channels. Sometimes you can change what channels are there, similar to what 2.4 can handle, but a lot of the devices don't give you that privilege. So it's a real headache sometimes when you have two contending devices trying to act like an ISP, and a direct printer like that is acting like an ISP. And an ISP is what's connected to your home modem router and using the same frequencies, possibly the same or very close in channels. Something that used to exist with the 2.4 is you take a cell phone, you put on a Wi-Fi analyzer, and it can show you the channels of each device that your system can see within a given range of your home, and tell you what's the strongest signal, what's the weakest signals, and where there may be contention between channels. You don't usually see that in 5 gigahertz or higher. But it is a potential cause of conflict. And that you'd have to look into the printer documentation or do some additional research on it to see if you can change its frequency as opposed to what your home computer's Wi-Fi is transmitting at. There's got to be a certain amount of spread of the bandwidths. Normally, bandwidths have either a 20 dB or a 40 dB bandwidth. A 40 is wide and can give you better signaling, but it also can cause a lot of problems with other interference. A dB20 signal is a narrower, more focused frequency and is less influenced by other sources of interference. It gets real hairy at times, not kidding. Anybody got anything else on even a new topic? Going once, going twice, sold. All right, I'll bring up something. When was the last time any of you used an optical drive? And was it a built-in drive or was it a USB attached drive?
I would say for me, external and about 5 years ago.
Okay, anybody else?
Within the last year, probably.
Okay, Dennis?
When you, I'm not even exactly sure of the definition. What is considered optical drive? Would that be just a regular hard drive instead of solid state?
No,
Like a DVD.
DVD drives or CD
Oh.
drives. Those are optical.
CD drive,
Okay.
CD, like
Yeah.
this here.
Can you turn
plug it
that
in.
envelope over? Well, now you totally disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a label barely visible. I was hoping
Here,
to see
let
the
me let me
media.
turn off my let me turn my video thing off.
Yeah, I know what you mean. No, I haven't used mine for probably a couple of years, I would say.
I can't even remember.
Not since TurboTax stopped giving you a regular DVD,
Right.
which has been about, I think, maybe 2 years now or so.
Well, the
Yeah.
funny part about it is with the I have a portable drive and I've lent it out occasionally to other people, but even that I have not used in a long time. Most fairly modern equipment does not have a CD/DVD drive in them anymore, and that's
Yeah,
why you
yeah.
have to have a USB device. They generally have only cost brand new like about $25, along with any shipping and handling charges, unless you can pick it up directly. Uh, Part of the reason why I bring it up, more than a decade ago, I was using it's a replacement adapter for optical drives you're not using that you put in place of the optical drive, such as in laptops. And what you put in it is a 2.5-inch spinning hard drive or a 2.5-inch SATA SSD drive. And that gives you a second real hard drive access for storage and other things. What I found out just recently, and part of the reason why I was so tied up, I have a person I help support on their computer. He had gotten a new machine early this year, and that was in part because his old machine was Windows 10 that could not upgrade to 11. And he was very happy with the bigger screen that the new one has a built-in pop-up push-down webcam camera built into it. It's an all-in-one. Well, I had to help him out fairly recently, and he called up one day. He was tired of tripping and running into the old all-in-one that he had previously, and wanted to know if I would take it off his hands. So he came by. He had to have somebody else do the driving. He couldn't. I think he used Uber or Lyft. I'm not sure which to get here. Give me the old system, and then he took a similar ride back to his place. He probably lives, I'd say, around 20-ish miles away. So it wasn't cheap for him to do it, but he got rid of something that was bothering him anyhow. So at first, I've never had an all-in-one. I would never have bought an all-in-one. Part of it because I know as a tech, most of them are very low end machines, very little power. Uh, Now, mind you, I at least know Linux, therefore I have the ability to put Linux on. It After a little while, I decided, what the heck, I'm going to take a look at this machine. It's got a sticker on it in the front that says Windows 7 and says Intel Pentium inside. So I try to fire it up and I get to the login screen and I don't know what his logins are. So, and I wasn't going to call him up and ask him. I didn't care. So I just took one of my flash drives and reloaded Windows 10 22H2 and took over the whole machine. And I don't remember explicitly. It had I think it's a GX 2030T Pentium processor, and I don't remember if that's 2-core with hyperthreading or a real 4-core with no hyperthreading. And it had an optical drive, but I started scratching my head. I do upgrading of a lot of my equipment. Well, I decided to do a little research on it. I could get a replacement CPU. Total cost of the chip, shipping, and my state's sales tax was $16.04. So what the heck, I'll go with that. Then I started looking at the Wi-Fi card, only 2.4 gigahertz, and I couldn't live with that. Replacement, I think, ran around 21 or $22 because it's a modern chip that I can take out and put in some other computer that gives me, I think, not only the N band, which is 2.4 plus G and B, and it also has AC support, which is 5 gigahertz, and it had AX, which is 6 gigahertz. And that's perfectly fine there as far as that goes as well. And I also remembered vaguely years and years ago, I had replaced this hard drive with a solid state drive, which was still in there. And I also had upgraded his memory from 4 gigabytes it originally had to 8. And that was the recommended manufacturer's max memory. And I looked around and saw on some postings that a lot of people were able to upgrade to 16 gigs. Well, I looked around in my junk box and I found an 8 gig drive doing nothing. So I took out 1.4, stuck it in, and I got it up to 12 gigs. So that cost me nothing. And I had one other thing that I wanted to take out the optical drive because it's useless to me. And I had a adapter that'll hold a second hard drive. And that's when I found out, ooh, you got to be careful with those because they come in 2 different depths, maximum depth. And you gotta, it's all in metric. So you gotta have a metric measuring tool. Most of the laptops, unless they're very, very old, have a 10 millimeter depth. And I have one in the machine I'm keeping my attendance on. The other is for that particular AIO device was 12.5, and I had just recently gotten one for about $10. I think with shipping and tax came out to about 12. And I put in a solid state drive in there and replaced the optical drive. And now I got 2 drives. Windows is on the internal primary drive, and I put and installed directly to the second drive Linux Mint. Now, normally, right after the installation, it wants to reboot. It remembers it was in that second drive, so it boots to that drive. But after that, if you shut down or you reboot the computer, it forgets about that second drive and always boots up to the Windows drive. And it does not have the grub menu, so you can't get into the Linux. Only the Linux drive has the grub menu. So I had to look around and in the BIOS, and I changed some settings there. And this is the only way to do dual booting on a computer. 2 separate drives. You got to change some settings in the BIOS. And in doing so, I don't boot up to the internal primary drive with Windows. I boot up to the secondary drive, to the grub menu, where I can launch Linux or I can launch Windows on the primary drive. And it does a better job of disk management than Windows Boot Manager does. So it was a squirrely little situation, but right now it's an usable state because I went from that Pentium drive to an i5 4-core processor. But I also had to get some thermal paste. That cost me about $10. And it's a high grade thermal paste, better than what I normally use most of the time, because the unit has a very lightweight cooling system that would be overtaxed with that processor in it without replacing the thermal paste with a high grade one. And now it runs perfectly fine and quite usable system. So that's my little story. Anybody got any comments? No, Dennis.
Explain that part, how you can pick which to boot on. Explain that part one more time. It's in the boot menu itself that you can change something?
No.
Or no?
You have. It's not the boot menu. When you got a dual drive like that and dual operating systems, the only way to cheat is you got to go in the BIOS and you have settings there. They're not explicit. It usually it took me as a tech to understand a few of the settings and a little bit of testing, and I switched I think 2 different settings, and suddenly I was always able to boot to the second drive. The second drive has the normal grub menu from the install, and because there was another drive with another OS, grub recognized it, put it in grub menu, and it's a way of being able to manage booting up to either one, whatever you want when you're booting up. And so, a lot of people seem to think that the grub menu launching Windows is far better than trying to dual boot one drive with Windows. So the 2 OSs are completely separate. Windows cannot complain about Linux. Linux cannot screw up Windows because they're all separate. It's just that the boot menu that Linux provides for will boot up any OS that it detects. I had one system several years back. I had 2 drives. Each drive had Windows, a different version of 10 on each of the 2 drives, and 11 other Linux distributions spread across the 2 drives. And Grub handles all that all by itself. Anybody got anything else? Boy, you guys are talkative tonight.
I have something.
Go ahead.
It's I had to find a document that I had made. I had a copy of from, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And it made you figure out how to use the file manager to do a search, to go back and try and find a document. Because, when you name a document, fine, you can find it fairly easily. But there may be situations where you can't remember the name, or the name is in the document, not in the title of the document. And
Yeah.
it turns out that Windows Search can find it. It may take a long time. And if you can narrow it down a little bit and say, okay, I know one word I'm looking for that might be inside the document, that limits, instead of having to go through 100,000 documents, maybe it's only 27,000 documents. And if you can bring it to what kind of file it was, like a PDF in that search, maybe you can get it down to 3,000 documents. And so I'm just pointing out that the file manager is very powerful if you're looking for something. And as you move from computer to computer, you carry those documents over to the next computer so that you don't lose it. And the files get to be built up very large after a while. And, you don't always remember the names of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So that file manager search is very powerful if you need to use it. And just a reminder for anybody that it's a tool built in Windows, and it's certainly good to keep it in mind. But I did find the file. It just took a long time.
Oh, that's
So-
one of those kind of searches where you set up the search before going to bed, and maybe by the next morning after breakfast, you'll have your results.
Well, it'd be smarter if you name things better, but that's a different problem.
Well, the bigger problem is in the search that you were doing, you only knew something that was contained within a document. That means it has to look at each document it finds, open it up, see if it finds a match or not in that file, and keep on going until it gets a hit, list that one out, and keep doing that until it goes through all the various files that it finds. It's just a case where searching within the content of your files is a longer, slower process than most people want to sit around and wait for. And
The other thing is you need to see if you want to do some settings. For instance, I wanted it, when I saw what was coming up, I needed to do ascending order so I could find it by alphabet. And the problem is that if you do that after you started searching, it starts all over again.
yeah, it won't take off from where it last was at. Dennis?
So Bert, if I want to ask about the kinds of documents. So PDFs, but what if it was in a Word in an Excel file or a Word file? Would it have found those too, or no?
Well, if it's an Excel file, it's .xls or XLS, XLSX.
No,
A
but I mean,
document is DOC or
would it find the
DOCX.
word, would it find the word you're searching for within an Excel document is what I'm asking.
Yeah,
If
it searches everything.
Yes, the answer is yeah. If the file is on Windows C drive or in your OneDrive, and you use the Windows File Manager, it will look inside Microsoft Office files.
In my case, it was also on an SD card that I was searching, which makes it slower.
Yeah.
The only
Another
thing,
thing to do, I keep all of my files in the cloud, so I can't use Windows File Manager the way that you're using it because it doesn't index the cloud. I use other tools, like there's a program called Agent Ransack, and you can point it towards your cloud drive and give it a word that's physically inside of a document, and it'll find it.
Dennis, when it comes to that kind of a search, you're not talking about a search that is 5, 10, 15 minutes long. You're talking, if you got lots of document files, whether they're Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDFs, etc., even text files or RTF files like I send out, it's going to take potentially hours to do it. So basically, that's I wasn't really joking. That kind of a search that's looking for content within the file, not in the name of the file, that takes a very, very long time, and you are best to take that kind of a search, start it up before you go to bed, and maybe after breakfast, it'll be done.
You can narrow it down a little bit if you pick a folder to search on and not the whole drive.
That's true too. That helps a lot. If you can narrow it down to certain locations on your drive, such as the documents folder, if you can narrow it down to the type of file that you think is what you're looking for, such as what Bert was saying with doc or docx, XL or XLSX, PPT or PTTX files, PDF,
or even JPEG.
etc. Yeah, it's just a case where you've got if you can narrow that down, the more you narrow down location to search and the type of file that it likely is in, it'll shorten the search time by quite a bit. If you cannot give any of those dimensions, then you're stuck with it having to go through any and every document it can find on the system, read them, and see if it finds a match or not.
You know, if you set up your files better than I did, you have folders that are more definable and only that type of file is in that folder. So it's limits where you got to look. And naming the files better also will help. But as we carry things forward from computer to computer, you don't want to lose your data, but it just brings up multiple files.
Okay.
Just bring another thing that you might want to just as an FYI. There is a program that you can get if you need to do this a lot. If you don't need to do this a lot, then it doesn't make a difference. But there is a program called Recall, which is an indexing program that will go through and index the contents of all of your files so that you can search for a particular word inside a particular document, no matter where it is, and it'll pull it up in a second or two because everything is pre-indexed.
Well, I'd hate to see that index on Bert's library of files.
Yeah, my index file is 13 gigabytes.
Woo!
Of
Right.
course, mine it indexes all of my mail, so that's including 20 years worth of mail.
Okay, does anybody have anything else in the way of problems, questions, etc.? Okay, well, we'll get into some of the stuff tonight. And let's see here. Oh, hey, I just noticed on Zoom, they used to have the share button green. The current version, it matches the background of my taskbar.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
that's right.
It was always green, so that's some kind of a change. I don't know if it was planned or not, or why. But anyway,
Mine's green.
I'm on my Chromebook. It's green. The share. Yeah.
well, I'm on 7.0.2,
Yeah,
and that's right now not green.
no, it's same background as the rest of the taskbar.
Yeah, mine looks like the tab bar background.
Yeah,
Well, at any rate, um, trying to find. Oh, I think I did a goof. Interesting. I really do think I goofed. I sure did. Can't recover from that. All right, we're going to have to do this the hard way, I think. Nuts. I accidentally closed down the articles for tonight's
shit.
meeting. All right. Hang loose for a minute. Come on. There we go. Got that. Now.
Bob, you're too quiet.
Hang on. Hang on. I haven't shared yet. I'm trying to get this out of my way. And I want to. Where in the heck did it put it? I hope I didn't just shut that down again. Dang it. Oh, I got it. But it's not showing up.
Hey, Wayne. I wonder if it could be possibly a somewhat loose connection on one of your Ethernet ends that could be
I
causing an issue.
used to work at a company that recorded its customers'
Do you hear that?
screens, every click, every submit, and my instruction broke, including.
Shut up, lady.
No, I don't think it's a loose connection. I think it's probably outside of my house.
Hmm.
I'm not having trouble with it today.
All right, I'm going to share that. Now, let's see if I can minimize that and bring this back up. Gotta double check the sound.
Company that recorded its customers' screens, every click, every scroll, every keystroke, including the stuff they typed and then deleted before hitting submit. And my instructions while doing customer service for this company were very clear. Do not tell the customers we have this. This is the Olive Badger channel, and what I just described isn't actually a scandal despite what you may think. It isn't a rogue company, it's just another Tuesday infrastructure, and it's probably running on a website you visited today. All right, guys, so there's an entire category of software built to watch what you do online in real time in great detail without most users ever knowing it exists. The companies making it are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and the companies using it are names you'd recognize like airlines, pharmacies, insurance providers, retailers you shop with every week, and credit card companies. There are wiretapping lawsuits involved. There are 1.36 million patients who got a very uncomfortable letter from their healthcare provider. There's even a free product from Microsoft that records your screen and ignores your privacy settings on purpose. And there's a consent argument that's currently doing the heaviest lifting in courtrooms across the country while the technology keeps deploying. So we've got a lot to cover today, but let's get into it. So, what is this scary technology that we're talking about today? It is called Session Replay. The name sounds like a sports broadcast thing, boring, technical, something that happens on a server somewhere with nothing to do with you personally, right? And I think that framing is intentional because here's what it actually does. So a company installs a small snippet of JavaScript on their website, and that code watches every visitor. It records mouse movements, clicks, scroll depth, page order, what order you visited pages in, keystrokes, etc., etc. Not just what you submitted, what you typed, including the words you started writing and then deleted before you ever hit the button. Then it stitches all of that together into a video replay of your session. From the moment you landed on the page or the mobile app to the moment you left, an employee at that company, or sometimes an employee at the software company, can pull up a dashboard, find your session, hit play, and watch where your cursor went, where you hesitated, what you almost did. And in my case, the company I worked at, this was used for customer service, and people were laughing at you at how stupid you were navigating their poorly developed mobile app and website. The pitch to companies buying this is reasonable on the surface. You use it to improve your product, find where users get stuck, fix broken buttons, and optimize the checkout flow. That's a real use case. And if 17 users in a row are clicking something and nothing happens, you probably want to know about it so you can fix it. But here's the thing about tools that let you watch everything your customers do without their knowledge. They tend to get used for more than fixing button. The software my company used is called FullStory. They describe themselves as a digital experience analytics platform, the kind of language engineered to be so dull you stop asking questions about what it actually does. And here's what it does. Basically everything I just described. Your session recorded, uploaded to a dashboard, available for replay. The company pays FullStory for access. FullStory hosts the data, and somewhere in FullStory's own terms of service, not your company's terms, FullStory's, there's a language about what they can do with the data they've collected across every site they're deployed on. Every site, collectively. Okay? I want you to think about that for a second. FullStory isn't just the tool your airline used or your new credit card company used. They're the tool your airline used, your pharmacy used, your credit card company, your bank, your insurance provider all used, and all of that behavioral data, how you navigate, how you hesitate, how you spam click or what they call dead click something, what you delete, all flows through this one company's infrastructure. And FullStory isn't alone, not even close. The session replay space includes companies like Hotjar, Microsoft Clarity, LogRocket, MouseFlow, Lucky Orange, SmartLook, and others. Some are enterprise products, some are niche, and then there's Microsoft Sentry, which is in a category by itself because of one specific detail, which we'll get into in a minute. As of early 2024, Hotjar, for example, was installed on over 72,000 of the top 1 million websites. This is not a fringe thing here, guys. That's a meaningful slice of the internet you actually use. Retailers, financial sites, airlines, healthcare portals, and Hotjar is just one player. This isn't a niche surveillance structure. At this point, it's just infrastructure that we didn't know about. So it's just been openly ruled out and accepted as normal. Now, Microsoft has their own replay product called Clarity. And here's the thing about Clarity. It is completely free. No subscription tier, no session cap, no usage limits, no monthly invoice. You just paste a code snippet on your site and you're recording your users for $0. It's free 99. Now, I want you to think about that free part because we're going to come back to that. But right now, I want to focus on something else that Clarity does, or rather something it doesn't do. So your browser typically has a setting that, depending on your browser, is more or less going to be called something like do not track. Maybe you turned it on, right? The concept is simple. Flip a switch, your browser sends a signal to every website you visit that says, I'd prefer not to be tracked. Well, do you think Microsoft Clarity honors that? No, they do not. They do not honor the do not track header. Not like doesn't honor it in some weird edge cases. It just doesn't honor it at all, like just full stop. So you went into your settings deliberately. You found the thing, you turned it on, you did the exact thing you were supposed to do to keep your data and your information private and secure and yours alone. And Microsoft's free screen recording product looked at that signal and said, noted, recording anyway. I genuinely don't know what commentary to even add to that. Like, it feels like it's just comments on itself. Like, it feels dystopian. It feels like every violation under the sun. Now, there is a caveat here. In the EU, UK, and Switzerland, Clarity does require explicit consent before tracking starts. So at least that's a thing. But the mechanism for respecting user privacy technically exists. Microsoft did build it. They just decided that they respect you so much that they're not going to apply it to users in the United States. Make of that what you will. Microslop doing Microslop things. Gotta love it. The defense for all of this, like the one that appears in every lawsuit, every PR statement, every journalist inquiry response, is that users consented in, surprise, surprise, the terms of service. But let's actually look into that a little bit. Because first off, nobody reads the terms of service. This is not even a cynical assumption. It's documented, consistent reality that the companies writing them design around this. There's a whole South Park episode about this with the human Sentai pad, right? Like, the other thing you have to look into is how long these terms of services are, and the length isn't even accidental. The passive voice, legalese burying the relevant clause in like paragraph 22 isn't accidental. If the disclosure was short, clear, and positioned where users would actually see it, users would understand that like exactly what they were agreeing to. And that outcome is bad for data collection business. So it isn't short or clear. And at my company, the session replay capability was described again in a language so vague that a normal person wouldn't recognize it as we record your screen. That vagueness was a feature, and the instruction again for me was to not bring it up with customers. If we were watching somebody having an issue, I don't know, paying a bill or logging into the site, our first line of defense, because this was chat and email support, no phone support, surprise, surprise, in America 2026, no phone support, was to watch what they were doing in real time, but then find very creative ways to pretend like we don't see what they're doing, kind of like, oh, sometimes people don't see this button, or sometimes this happens, or fake error logs. I see this error log, and it looks like you need to do this. That typically fixes it, right? Like, This is not acceptable. How is this good customer service? How is this a good way to run a business? You do, like, and again, in the background, you had people that were laughing at how stupid some of these customers were when their website just wasn't intuitive. Like, it was all disgusting. It was all stupid. And luckily, courts have even started agreeing with this logic, which leads us directly to the lawsuits, and there are a lot of them. So starting around 2022, a wave of class action wiretapping suits landed. Papa John's, Ulta, Spirit Airlines, JetBlue, Liberty Mutual, True Value all hit with wiretapping claims over their use of session replay tools on their websites. All argued they were improving the user experience, and all argued users had consented. In a suit against Nike and FullStory, the plaintiff alleged that FullStory's session replay captured payment card data, IP addresses, and location data. I saw this happen. It would try to blur this stuff out, but it really wasn't consistent. It would like blur it on one screen and then show up with personal identifiable information, PII, in the next screen. It was not consistent. And apparently for Nike's case, none of this type of stuff appeared in Nike's privacy policy. Though the plaintiff didn't even know Full Story existed, they visited Nike's website. They had no idea there was a third company involved in that interaction. In Hasson versus Full Story, a Pennsylvania man sued Full Story directly, not the retailer deploying it, the software company itself, alleging the software wiretapped him while he was browsing Mattress Firm's website. The argument was Full Story wasn't just a tool Mattress Firm used. Full Story was an active third party intercepting the communication between the user and the site. Similar class actions were filed against JetBlue, Papa John's, and others, citing Pennsylvania's Wiretapping and Electronic Surveillance Act. The legal theory across most of these, Pennsylvania and California have all-party consent laws, so every person in a recorded communication has to agree to the recording. Using a third-party tool to intercept user behavior without explicit informed consent may violate those statutes. Outcomes so far appear to have been inconsistent. Some dismissed on jurisdiction. Full Story is incorporated in Delaware with its principal place of business in Georgia, which does create friction for out-of-state plaintiffs. Some dismissed on the question of what counts as interception in transit versus in storage. Courts are split on whether session replay data constitutes the content of a communication under wiretapping statutes or just metadata. One summary judgment went to defendants because the court found the session replay vendor couldn't read or attempt to read the data while it was in transit, only after it was reassembled. Another case found Full Story was clearly a third party to the communication, not merely a tool, because it was an independent business providing a service, and allowing an exemption would create a loophole for any company that wanted to record users by routing through a vendor. So right now, the legal status of recording your users without meaningful disclosure is that it depends on which courthouse you land in, which state you're in, and which judge reads interception literally. The companies just keep deploying, the lawsuits keep filing, and the courts are working through what 1980s wiretapping law means when applied to a JavaScript snippet on a retail website. Great system. Really working great. Gotta love it. That's sarcasm, by the way. All right, so here's where this stops being a consumer annoyance story and becomes something that I have a genuine problem with. Technically, I have a genuine problem with the whole thing, but in January 2023, a class action was filed in California alleging that a direct-to-consumer pharmacy and telehealth platform, HeyFavor Inc., shared sensitive medical information with Meta, TikTok, ByteDance, and Full Story. Medical information with an analytics company. Like, think about what a session on a telehealth platform looks like. Someone is typing their symptoms, selecting a doctor, filling out a medical history, maybe describing something in a free text box, and then deleting it because they weren't sure how to say it. And that last part, the thing they deleted, like, all potentially captured and transmitted to a third-party analytics company. And this isn't an isolated case. Healthcare provider Novant had to notify 1.36 million patients of unauthorized protected health information disclosure after a tracking pixel on their website was misconfigured, leaking email addresses, phone numbers, emergency contact information, appointment type, selected physician name, and the full contents of a free text field. In March of 2023, the FTC issued a proposed order against BetterHelp, the online therapy platform, banning the company from sharing consumers' mental health data with third parties for advertising. BetterHelp was ordered to pay $7.8 million to consumers in order to settle allegations that it had shared mental health information with Facebook and Snapchat without obtaining users' informed consent. This wasn't session replay specifically, it was called pixel tracking, but it's the same infrastructure, the same failure mode, the same decision to deploy analytics tools on sensitive platforms without auditing what's flowing through them. The FTC and the HHS have actually issued a joint letter flagging exactly this problem, tracking technologies on healthcare websites, collecting data that may include protected health information, and disclosing it to third parties without proper authorization. Now, session replay tools technically offer masking for sensitive fields. Like I said, it tried things like passwords, payment card numbers, sometimes PII, but only if the company deploying them configures it correctly and only if it consistently works. Most companies deploying these tools are not security engineers. They're a product manager who copy and pasted a script tag from a sales demo. The assumption that every healthcare deployment is carefully audited for data leakage is wildly optimistic. The Novant breach didn't happen because someone was malicious. It happened because of a misconfiguration that nobody checked. And I just want to pause for a second because nobody checked is the version of this story that should keep you up at night, because we keep seeing this, whether it's through AI, vibe coding, or just business deadlines that are unrealistic or stupid business people pushing these dumb decisions, malice is at least intentional. Nobody checked means this is the default outcome when you hand powerful surveillance infrastructure to organizations that don't fully understand what it's capable of and given them no regulatory requirement to find out. So remember when I said to hold on to the free part of Microsoft and Clarity? Well, here it is. Session replay infrastructure is not cheap to run. You're storing reconstructed video sessions for millions of users across thousands of websites with processing pipelines, storage, engineering support, and an AI layer on top of it to boot. Microsoft integrated Copilot into Clarity to auto-summarize sessions. This is not a product that runs at zero cost because of corporate generosity. Using Clarity gives Microsoft rights to use your customers' data. That's the whole business model. You install Clarity on your website, your users get recorded, Microsoft gets behavioral data from a significant slice of the internet, what people click, how they navigate, where they hesitate, what they delete before submitting, even personal information, and that feeds Microsoft's advertising products, AI training pipelines, and analytics infrastructure. You get a free dashboard, Microsoft gets everything behind it. This is also not a Microsoft exclusive pattern. It applies across the free analytics space. When a platform offers unlimited recordings at no cost, the question worth asking is, what are they doing with the data after it leaves your dashboard? And the answer is almost always building something with it. Whether it's their own model, their own ad targeting, their own training data, the product is free because you, the website operator, are not the customer. Your users are the product. We've seen this with the social media, email, and search, but there's something different about it being applied to literal screen recordings, not just what you clicked, but what your hands did, what your brain started to say and then stopped. And the fact that you just signed up for a credit card, and the process of signing up for a credit card you think would be secure, but it's actually not, and a separate company is profiting off of what you did. So practical sections, I'm not going to leave you guys with nothing. There is a free tool called Backup built by The Markup. You can enter any website URL and it scans what tracking technologies are running on it, including whether FullStory, Hotjar, Clarity, or other session replay tools are present. Take 30 seconds, link in the description. uBlock Origin blocks many of these scripts at the browser level. Firefox and Brave do a reasonable amount by default, not airtight by any. Determined deployments will route around some of it, but it meaningfully reduces your surface area at least. And if you're in California or Pennsylvania, the all-party consent wiretapping statutes here do have actual teeth. Most of these lawsuits are filed in those states specifically because the legal framework is the most viable there. So if you were recorded without meaningful disclosure on a site operating in those jurisdictions, you may have options, and I think that's worth knowing. If you're a developer, product manager, or anyone who's ever installed a tracking snippet because a salesperson told you it would help with conversion rates or whatever, audit your configuration before you go home today, if possible. Look at what data is flowing through unmasked fields. Look at whether your session replay deployment is capturing anything it shouldn't be. Because the Novant breach didn't happen to a careless company, it happened to a healthcare provider that just didn't check. Now, here's where I land. Session replay itself isn't an evil technology. We can't inherently really say any technology is evil. And in theory, the genuine UX use case is real, but that's not the issue. The issue is the decision layer. Somebody decided non-disclosure would be the default. Someone decided that burying the relevant clause in 40 pages of legalese was sufficient consent, and somebody deployed session replay on something like a pharmacy portal without auditing what health data was floating through unmasked fields. Somebody at Microsoft decided the price of a free tier enterprise product would be your user behavioral data, and that the terms reflecting that decision would live quietly in the fine print. None of those are oversights. They're business decisions reviewed by lawyers, approved by executives, deployed at scale, and the justification in every legal filing, every PR response, every we take privacy seriously boilerplate is the user consented. It's in the terms, to which I keep wanting to say, you wrote the terms, stupid company, in your own legal language in a document you knew nobody would read because you designed it not to be read, and then you pointed at the signature of that document as proof that everyone was magically okay with this. That isn't consent. That's the architecture of consent, the shape of it, hollowed out, refilled with something close enough to survive a motion to dismiss. They clicked I agree because I agree was the only button on the mother effing page, and I'm tired of the button being the only option. This is unacceptable. It's disgusting, scammy corporate behavior, and I hate it. If this video was worth your time, a like genuinely helped.
here for a minute. Any comments on this? I just came across this thing, by the way, this morning.
Did she say there was a website that you could plug, Nike or plug it in to see if it had this software?
There
missed-
is many sites that she enunciated that basically they're third-party providers. They're kind of like cookies in the sense that they're on your system and you can reject them, but if you reject them or you delete them, you have to, if you go back to that same site, you have to give them the same information all over again. Only these are hidden in legalized terms to hide them, and they are running scripts in your browsers in order to collect every mouse movement, every keystroke, everything that you put in, even if you delete it out and rephrase your statement, it doesn't matter. They capture 100%. And then
Yeah, but I thought
the companies that are vendors that are using this third-party software have total access to see everything you did
right.
in real
But I
time.
thought you said there was some software that we could plug a vendor's name into, and it would tell us whether they were using Clarity or anything else.
Yes,
She did say that. She said that there's something, and I didn't catch what it was, but I think it's in the details below the video, that can pre-screen sites, and I will tell you which of these technologies are in use at the site. And then some blockers may be able to block many of these behaviors.
the only ones she brought up as a blocker was uOrigin ad blocker.
Block origin.
Might
Yeah, but she
some of
in combination with this tool that can screen for it, then you can decide what and how to block.
yeah,
she
and,
indicated.
There's only two browsers she mentioned, Firefox and Brave, that might have some limited blocking capability also.
Yeah, Firefox and Brave do have built-in privacy, but they won't block all of this unless you take further action.
Right.
And if you do take these kinds of actions, there are sites you won't be able to use.
That's right.
What was the name of the video? I missed that. I could go back
I
to it.
don't know that she named the software.
No, I mean the
It-
name of her video. The video that Tim played. What's the name of that in YouTube?
Oh, it's on my list.
It'll be on the list, but the list was not circulated before the meeting. It'll be in the handout.
It always has been, always will be.
Okay.
So go review
I
the
don't know
video.
what meetings you attend, but almost none of them give out the information before the meeting, let alone at the beginning of the meeting. They always wait till the end, and the good reason. They want your attention, not you playing around with the list they're going to give you at the end of the meeting.
There are sometimes topic lists, and in fact, usually there's a list that says what's going to be covered at the meeting, but it doesn't give what the video is.
Right. And besides that, I give that part out usually, but because I didn't get the announcement and invite done and out, I just put in TBA, to be announced.
Right.
Well,
Good enough for me.
All that information that's in the Copilot or all those other things, like it, come from somewhere, and this is how they get it.
Yeah. That's one avenue of how they get it. It's not a single layer of getting it. It's like a multi-layer cake, many, many layers, and each one collects certain kinds of information. And as an end result, just from biting into one piece of cake and all the layers determines how much information they're getting for anything and everything you do on the system.
And when you combine a billion people, the data from a billion people, that's how they get their software.
That's
So it
right.
doesn't matter whether I'm using Windows or Linux. Doesn't matter. They're grabbing it all. Correct.
Where do you think all these AIs are coming from?
Dennis, in answer to your question from a technical point of view, browsers behave very similarly under all operating systems where they work. Especially if they're using scripts within the browser, those are virtually identical.
Yeah, JavaScript is being replaced in part by some other things like PHP and several other things. But JavaScript is really the backbone of interactive web presence. If you don't have interactivity, all you can do is go to a website and see what is there. One fixed value at each site. You do not have the ability to drop down menus and select different categories, put in search terms, etc., etc. That's interactive. Interactive means that you're giving them feedback of what you're interested in. So it's one of those goody goodies. Oh, am I glad I have that. Let's see what we can, oops, what the heck? Hit the wrong button. I don't like this new search button. Now, I'm gonna take you, honey, and I'm gonna replace you.
What you guys got another video here for you. This Windows update could lock you out. Microsoft issues a warning. Microsoft confirmed that Windows 11 KB 5083769, which is this update right here, which I'm downloading on the system, can cause issues with BitLocker where you get locked out of your computer and you'll have to put in your recovery key to be able to continue to the desktop. And this is something I'm going to show you right here because it happened on this system and I reported it saying it might be just a freak thing that's happened to my computer, but it turns out that it's bigger than what we thought because Microsoft have now confirmed that this update can actually trigger a BitLocker recovery screen alert during the Windows update process. Of course, this update was for April's Patch Tuesday when I did the update. This is what we're updating right here. And Microsoft have already said that they are already trying to find a fix and roll out that fix to the general public. Now, this will probably be another out-of-bound fix, or it will be coming down the pipe through your Windows updates like this has right here. So problems are still happening, regardless of what Microsoft are saying. These problems are still happening because I recorded it on my screen, as you'll see right here. Now you may be saying, what's the big deal? All you need to do is put in your BitLocker recovery key and continue on to the desktop. Unfortunately, a lot of people that have been forced to use BitLocker when they've installed Windows don't even know what BitLocker is and they don't even know what it's doing. So when they get this on the screen like this is exactly what's happened right here, you're not going to be able to continue to be able to get to the desktop. And some people are just bamboozled by something like this. So BitLocker recovery means I need to put in a full long recovery key to be able to continue to get back to the desktop so I can get my data. And so many people fall foul to BitLocker and they don't even know it was on or what it's doing. And this is a major side effect of when you force people to use BitLocker during setup of Windows 11 out of the box, because some people just don't know how serious this is, because once this key is lost, you will not be able to gain access to your data. and a majority of people that are not tech savvy just will have no clue of how to deal with, say, BitLocker recovery. Now, you do have to put the key in multiple times before it actually lets you get back to the desktop. That was another problem that I faced here. Now, I've obviously cut it down just to one time because obviously it wants to reboot, and then I get the BitLocker recovery screen again, and eventually after the third time I managed to get to the desktop. Now, of course, we know that Windows updates can accidentally trigger a BitLocker recovery screen like this one, but it doesn't happen frequently. However, over the past 6 months, we've seen multiple reports of BitLocker recovery screens appearing out of nowhere after, Windows updates, or just basically after you've rebooted the system. Now, Microsoft have said in a document, which I'll show you in a second, that the BitLocker recovery screen is triggered on some PCs with unrecommended BitLocker group policy configurations. Well, after I've put in this BitLocker key, I did check group policy and there's no group policy settings on this system. So for me, it's nothing to do with group policy configuration. They also went on to say that it's mainly business computers that it's affecting, and yet it's affecting me, who is a home user, testing on this system right here. And I did read in the comments section that some other people that were using BitLocker had the same problem. So it is an issue, and people need to be aware that if you do have BitLocker enabled and you did update that, you could run into some major problems. Now, this is the article right here, April 14th, 2026, KB 5083769. And these are the builds right here for 25H2 and 24H2. If you have BitLocker enabled, I'll just roll this down here so you'll see what Microsoft said. Now, I know a lot of people that update Windows on a regular basis and might not have all the issues that we're mentioning here. And this is because some of these issues might not be widespread. They might be just really small groups of people that are being affected by it. But this is bigger than what Microsoft are saying it is, because they're saying that this issue is to do with group policy settings, and there was no group policy settings set on this system. You can see here, April 14th, 2026, known issues added: devices with the unrecommended BitLocker group policy configuration might be required to enter their BitLocker recovery key. Now, if you're forcing people to use BitLocker straight out of the gate, and all of a sudden you are now presented with the BitLocker recovery key, you might not understand what that means, and it might have all your precious data on it, and you might not be completely computer tech savvy, and this is a real big issue. And Microsoft don't care whether you lose your data or not, or whether you have to take that to a PC repair shop to try and get your data back. And of course, if you don't know what your key is and you haven't got it tied to your Microsoft account, and you may have forgot, then you're going to be in big trouble. Now, they did make another post right here, an updated post, which I'll show you right here. And they go into a bit more detail about how you can bypass this issue. And we're going to come down here where it talks about the BitLocker recovery. So this is the article that was updated right here, and it says known issues in this update. And it goes on to say exactly what we mentioned before about devices with unrecommended BitLocker group policy configuration, which we don't have on this system. And it says symptom: some devices with unrecommended BitLocker group policy configuration might require to enter their BitLocker recovery key. Goes on to say this issue affects a limited number of systems in which all of the following conditions are true. These conditions are unlikely to be found on personal devices, which is what I have, and managed by their IT departments. That is not the case, because this is a home system, and there's been other people in the comments section of that video saying they've had the same issue with the false BitLocker recovery key after a Windows update, and they are a home user and nothing to do with group policy configuration. So this problem is bigger than what they're letting on. And of course, if you are one of these people affected, then let me know in the comments section down below, because I'll be interested to know how big of an issue this was for people that did have BitLocker. Now, some people have said that it went through flawlessly with BitLocker enabled. Now, WindowsLatest.com also mentions it on their website, so it is an issue, and other tech outlets are also reporting about it. So my advice to you, if you have BitLocker enabled and you are thinking about updating your Windows, maybe
Okay. Now, on this issue, first he mentions about group policy. Group policy only exists in Windows 11 Pro version. He kept saying that he's a home user, meaning he's got a Windows 11 home version, and there is no policy editor. So whatever triggered this problem, here's the main thing. A lot of people only have one computer. How do you get into your Microsoft account when you can't log into that one computer to go to your account information, security information, and get a copy of your BitLocker key so you can go back to your computer, type in very carefully. One little typo screws the whole thing up, and you have to repeat doing it because it's a 48 character key.
Can you show everybody where to find the BitLocker key?
Wasn't prepared to do that, but generally speaking, you go out to Microsoft.com and you have the ability to access your account. And if when you log in and they're forcing you to have a Microsoft account, then you go bring up the browser for that account, and you click on your icon, open up the account information. There's a security section, and the BitLocker key is in the security section, and you have to take a copy of it. You can either print it out on your printer, or you can take the do a copy paste into a Word document to do the same basic thing, whether you print it to paper or not. And you can also put it on a drive that's set up as a BitLocker key so that you can plug a USB device in. It sees that this has got the file for the BitLocker key, automatically takes it. There's no typing, you just get access.
The simple way to get to deal with all this is go to the start menu and at the top type in BitLocker, and it comes up with a list of manage BitLocker, backup your recovery key, device encryption settings, all that. If you just type BitLocker at the top of the start menu, that'll get you to the right place.
Well, apparently that person that made the video, and I play a lot of his videos and post them. Bottom line is, you can't get to that startup menu.
Right. If you can't go to your computer, turn your computer on, you can't get to it. But that you can, in advance, save the BitLocker key
in advance,
by
that's
what
true.
I just described.
In advance, that's true. That's one of the many, many different ways you can get to your account to get that security section and get a copy of your key.
Right.
And it's up to you. If you either directly print it out or you do a copy paste and put it in like a Word document that you may or may not print out. If you don't print it out and it's only on that computer, when it's locked up, so is your key. So you have no access. Now, like I said, there is another option, and that other option is to dedicate a USB drive for the purposes of having that key on it. You just plug it in, and it automatically takes care of the recovery issue. But here's the hairy part. The total capacity of this BitLocker information on a USB drive is only probably no more than a few hundred kilobytes in size. Okay, now, when was the last time you saw a flash drive that was 8 gigabytes in size? The smallest one I've got is 64 gigs, and it's
Yeah.
only one such drive. That's 64 megabytes in size, but I use it for other things. It's like Macro Reflect Rescue Media. Takes less than 400 megabytes of space. How many of you have a 512 megabyte flash drive to store that on? I've got one, but I've also got like this one. This is a different one. This is 1 gigabyte, and 1 gigabyte was obsolete a long time ago. But bottom line is, you have to use and tie up bigger and bigger and bigger drives. And right now, RAM prices, SSDs, GPUs, many of the large capacity spinning hard drives, and guess what? Prices are affecting flash drives and SSD cards also.
Can't you just take a picture of the screen?
Yes, you can. But you also have to be able to read it. And like I say, there's 48 characters and you cannot make a mistake.
So if I understood you correctly, it only affects the pro version of Windows,
No,
not
no.
the home.
Only the Pro version has the editor he's talking about. In other words, if I have Pro versions, quite a few of them. I don't think I've got any home versions. Bottom line is, I can go into gedit for group policy edit, and I can set up global or selective rules and regulations of what you can and can't do. And he's saying if you are a person with Pro and the editor and you made such changes, one of those changes is causing the problem that brings up the recovery screen wanting your BitLocker key. If you don't have that, like on Windows 11 Home, that's not an issue. There's something else that is the issue causing the bug. Bob?
Okay, where this happens is Windows 11 Home in a standard setup requires you to do a Microsoft account and it automatically engages BitLocker. It's not the same BitLocker as Pro. It is a BitLocker that requires that your BitLocker key be stored in the Microsoft Cloud account and is never stored on your local machine. And it's basically a read mode. You don't have a write or create capability in Home for BitLocker keys.
No.
And the result of that is many people who had their computers set up at a computer shop didn't know about this. And they also don't know whose account the key is in. It may not be your own account. It may be a technician's account. And the result is you don't have access to it.
Also,
And you don't even know, and people don't even know they're supposed to turn off BitLocker if that's the case.
and there are still cases where you can set up a local account. But if BitLocker was turned on at installation time, it's not copied to a Microsoft account. Good luck if that's the case. The very first time you get in with the local account, you would have to check your settings, privacy and security, and see if BitLocker is turned on. If it is, I guarantee you, you get that thing turned off. If you don't, you are out of luck because you will not get the key to unlock that system. So anything that's currently on the system, when it locks up, is lost.
Yes. And if you ever do turn BitLocker on again after that, then it will offer to save your key various ways, usually to a Microsoft Cloud account, although you could also have it saved to a recovery drive.
Yeah, but that's the
And
only
but-
way to do it. Turn it off and turn it back on, and then save the information. But if you
Right.
don't understand, and that's what he's getting to, most people are non-techie. They don't know what the hell BitLocker is to begin with,
Right.
let alone what this key is all about. And they're the most frustrated people. And a lot of the texts they may rely upon, they're not exactly, shall we say, the brightest stars in the sky. So as an end result, you may be at a total loss on your system. And
Yeah.
part of it really comes down to there's a lot of the vast majority of users are just plain users of the computer. They don't want to know anything about the hardware. They don't want to know anything about the operating system, etc. Not knowing this stuff is bliss. And if you want to know what bliss is, go look it up in a dictionary or do an online search for the definition. But it's bliss to them until it isn't.
That's
And
right.
that's too late. And
Yeah.
especially when you
I-
only
So
got
would
one
I be
computer.
correct?
Yeah.
All right.
My BitLocker's turned
So,
off.
so would I be correct in saying, okay, I have a Windows 10 with a local account and going to try to upgrade it to Windows 11? I shouldn't run into any of these issues here at all then.
Well, it depends. Now, if you have Windows 10 Pro, you might not run into the problem because in Pro, most of the Pros are not set up with the BitLocker right off the bat. However, there are some that will set up BitLocker automatically with the Pro version. If you got the Home 10 version, there's a high probability it will be set up with the BitLocker.
Mike mentioned that if you have two drives, you have a choice of putting BitLocker on either or both.
Well, all I can say is BitLocker has, especially in portable devices, they want you to have BitLocker on. Why? Because most people with a portable device take it outside their home. If it ever gets left somewhere by accident and or is stolen by somebody, such as in a robbery, etc., they can't get into your data unless they got your account information, can log in as you, and get that BitLocker security key, assuming you set up a Microsoft account to begin with.
Of
Now,
course, BitLocker encrypts all your data, and
yeah,
that's what you need to get it to unencrypt to be able to see it. So if somebody just took the drive when they got your machine, they couldn't just read the text.
yeah, and in that same vein, what it is, somebody who is techier than maybe you are, they would probably ignore trying to run on that computer whatever is on it. They take the drive out, put on a USB adapter, plug it into their machine, and use it like a data drive. Well, the entire drive is encrypted by BitLocker. And I mean every single bit of information stored on that drive is encrypted. So all they get is garbage unless they got the key, which is the BitLocker key, 48 characters long, they can put in, and then they'd have total access.
So on my Windows 10, which is Home Edition, if I try to do search in the search bar for BitLocker, if it's on, can I just turn it off?
You don't do that. What you do is you go to settings in the start menu, the start button, select settings, and you go into privacy and security section, and it should tell you whether it has BitLocker, and it's usually a third line. At least that's what I've always seen. And you click on that security section, opens it up, and it'll tell you it's on or it's off. If it's on, you can shut it off. But if you upgrade to 11, the new installation will automatically turn it on. That's what I'm getting at. So until you got it installed, it means nothing. When you first get in to the desktop on 11, that's when you go into start button, settings, privacy, security, see if it's got BitLocker, click on that, and then see if it's turned on or off. Odds are it'll be turned on. You can turn it off if you want to. And either completely leave it off, or you can turn it back on whenever you want to. And it may give you options to save the BitLocker key without going into your Microsoft account. If your 10 machine is set up as a local, odds are the Microsoft 11 update would initially be set up as a local, but as you get into the setting up of 11, it's going to try and force you, unless you know some of the tricks, to create a Microsoft account so that it can save that key there, so you can go into that account at any time, find the privacy section, and be able to record that BitLocker key. So you got a couple options. It's a muddy mess, period. It shouldn't exist. If anything, during that initial setup process, they should have a clear statement. We recommend turning on BitLocker because this is a portable device, or here is an option to turn it on, even if it's a non-portable device. And you either turn it on or you leave it off. But it's got to explain what the hell BitLocker is and what the meaning of it is in plain, straight English, so that all users know what the hell the BitLocker is, what BitLocker is, and what its importance is to them, and the security of their information staying private, whether it's one user or a family of 13, 14 people in the house using the same machine. All of the users registered on that system can be protected by the BitLocker universally, because it does the entire drive.
I don't have BitLocker turned on, but the interesting thing is it's got drive encryption is clicked on. but it says that I have to sign in with my Microsoft account to finish encrypting the device.
That is exactly the form that BitLocker takes in the Home Edition.
Well, this is Pro.
Pro should not be referring to it as device encryption. They should be referring to it as BitLocker.
Well,
I think you started out with a home and upgraded it to a pro.
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's correct, Bob. He
Yeah.
originally was home. There is a difference between the home and the pro in the way it looks and what is presented to you. The pro is more understandable from my point of view only than the home. The home tries to hide a bit what the hell the BitLocker is, why they recommend having it turned on in the first place. And it's because it's a laptop and the laptop is portable. The portability means he could walk out of his place and forget it at a coffee shop or a restaurant because somebody he's gabbing with at the coffee shop is got his attention, and he forgets that he had the laptop with him. He leaves it there. Somebody else now has access to it. Somebody.
well, my BitLocker's not turned on. So I just turned off this device encryption, and it says if you do this, your files won't be protected, and decryption can take a long time.
That is correct. You're talking, let's say that you got a 256 gigabyte drive. It's quicker to decrypt BitLocker when it is on, but when it's off, it has to go through and read everything to create the proper setup of encryption. Then it encrypts everything until you properly log in. And they do want you to have the Microsoft account so that that key gets copied up there. One little thing nobody ever mentions about the BitLocker. Normally in this country until I think it was 1979, when a law got passed that a government agency had to get a signed judge warrant to get information about your account. Nowadays, all they do is give a subpoena, which means there's no control by a judge as to whether their case for wanting your information is valid legally or not. And so they just hand it to a lot of the major players. They don't want trouble with the government, etc. So they just turn it over, which means if they seized your machine encrypted with BitLocker, they don't have to ask you anything. They'll say, Microsoft, give us the BitLocker key for this account. And they'll be able to log in, give the BitLocker key information, and they've got access to anything on that drive, period. And that includes what you think are deleted files that are still there in part that can be recovered.
Well, I'm confused because my device encryption is clicked on, but my BitLocker is not turned on.
Well, I surmise, and this is only a guess on my part, when it was home, you may have turned it off before you upgraded to the pro level, or the pro level turned it off for you. Because like I say, a lot of the pro versions do not automatically lock things up. And most of them are unlocked. And you, the owner, have to invoke the BitLocker key, and it'll take a while for it to set up all the encryption and a key, and it wants to put it up in a cloud Microsoft account.
Yeah, by the way, Pro does support both the device encryption like Home does and the full BitLocker. So if you had a Home edition and it had device encryption, your Pro would carry over that device encryption and it would behave the same way as it did with your Home edition. But BitLocker, full BitLocker for Pro, would not be automatically enabled.
So this is partially encrypted then.
No, it's fully encrypted, just with the Home edition strength of encryption. The Pro edition strength is stronger.
It's
No.
the same key you had originally when you bought the machine and set it up. Period. It's using the exact same key even though you changed to the Pro version.
Yeah, everything carried over from your Home installation. It's the same key, the same type of device encryption. It just simply carried over to your Pro.
So is there a decryption that I'd have to, BitLocker type of thing, I'd have to de-encrypt it then?
If you did turn off device encryption as it told you, it would have to decrypt everything on the drive, and that could take some time.
And actually, it's faster and easier to decrypt the drive when you turn off BitLocker versus encrypting it when you turn it on. It takes even longer.
Yeah, but
But
still,
if
this is not going to be a short operation.
Yeah, but if I click on that, I clicked on that,
Mhm.
turning the decryption off or
Yeah.
encryption off, and then it said that you have to, do I have to put a key in then to do that?
No,
Does it ask?
it,
No.
Does it ask?
it wouldn't.
If it doesn't ask, you don't have to.
Yeah, it never asks when it turns back on. However, sometimes when you've taken and turned BitLocker off, and then later you turn it back on, sometimes it will generate a new key altogether. But that's saved in your Microsoft account. If you're somehow doing a local account and you turn it back on, good luck. If it gives you that information of the new key, make sure you save it 100%. If you don't save it and an error comes up like was discussed in the video, you got no way of recovering that drive and what the content is.
Yeah, here it says if you turn this device encryption off, if you do this, your files won't be protected, and decryption can take a long time. So, okay,
It
Both
does take
true.
longer.
You might want to check to see if there's an encryption, a BitLocker key already on your system, and at least get a copy of that before you do any more.
What you
Okay.
would do is check your Microsoft Cloud account, see if it's up there,
okay.
and do
Okay.
keep a copy of it just in case.
Or
Yeah, 'cause
just type
BitLocker's
BitLocker at
turned
the
off.
top of the start button and see if you can get the information there.
Well,
Yeah,
BitLocker's turned off.
no, it would be the device encryption key. Device encryption keys are kept in your Microsoft Cloud account. So
Okay,
no matter how you go about getting that, it will send you to your Microsoft Cloud account.
okay.
That's an automatic thing. It doesn't require your intervention in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but retain a copy.
Yeah, and I originally said about the BitLocker key up in your account to print it out, copy paste, put in a document, or use the flash media to create a key. And like I think Bert was the one who brought it up, or Bob, you can also take your smartphone and take a picture of it. but be careful what you do. That's private information, and police, if they think you're some kind of a criminal in it, will seize your smartphone, and they'll want you to give them the access code to get into the device. But barring that, they have software available to crack almost any phone's encryption and get the information they want. And if they know that you took a picture of your BitLocker key, here's the key. I got your machine. We put in the key. We got access. We don't. We can do anything we want to with that data. However, whether it can be used against you in a court of law depends upon the legalities of how it was obtained and what the charges are against you before they got the information. And I'm not a lawyer, so there's a lot of ins and outs there that can really make a mess of things. If you think you're totally protected, guess again. Now, we don't have enough time to get into another video, so I'm not going to bother with doing that. I'll see about getting the handout.
When you told Wayne that it could take a long time to unencrypt, are you talking hours? Are you talking days? Or is there any kind
Well,
of
that
estimate?
depends on so many variables. Is everybody's computer absolutely identical? Yes or no?
Let me unmute. No.
Okay. If they're not all identical, that means there are differences like CPU, how much RAM, how much horsepower that system has, how fast is the drive that's storing the data, etc. So there's lots of variables there that determine how long it's going to take to decrypt, as well as how long it will take to re-encrypt it.
It's just not instant. So you
Yeah, it
expect
ain't instant. That's for sure.
something to expect. It'll take a while.
I've done some turning off and decrypting some drives, and generally speaking, less than a half hour, and sometimes as little as 5 to 10 minutes. It depends on what the CPU is, how much RAM and its speed, what kind of a storage device is it, and its speed. How much data is there? Do you have a 64 gigabyte drive? Do you have a 120, a 128, 240, 250, 256, 480, 500, 512, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, 4 terabyte, 8 terabyte drives? What do you have? Everything's got a maximum speed, and you figure out which one is the slowest part of the process to encrypt or decrypt. You want a simple answer to a computer, which is the most complicated, most powerful device mankind has devised to date, though they're working on a quantum computer that makes today's computers look like junk. Let's see here. Oh, shit.
Do any users have any recourse against Microsoft for bricking their computer or anything like that?
Sure. You can go to Linux, you can go to Mac OS, you can go to BSDs and some other esoteric operating systems. Good
No, I mean
luck.
suing Microsoft because your computer was bricked and getting your
If what happened is deemed to be due to something the end user did wrong, in this case, misplacing or forgetting your key, usually how the courts rule is that it was an end user error, and Microsoft is not responsible for end user errors. And also, Microsoft offers their software, including BitLocker, as is with no warranty. And your sole remedy is, at the most, a refund of the cost of the license.
And bottom line is, it's up to you. You own the device. If you don't learn about the device, your ignorance is going to get you one way or another, and you may have zero recourse. And even if you think you've got real recourse, odds are they're gonna you're gonna find out that it's not as good as you think.
Don't forget about backups. They come into play and are useful in this situation.
You should definitely have unencrypted backups of anything that you are carrying around with you that's encrypted.
Okay, the handout's out there twice. Just download one of them. It's
How did it get there
it was
twice?
giving me a problem not going out the first time, and I accidentally sent it the second time.
Well, I don't need a second copy. Thank
Like
you.
I said, just download one of the two copies. That's it. And that'll give you the two articles, the two videos that we did, and a whole lot more. Bert, do you have yours?
Yep.
Wayne, do you have yours?
I'm just getting it.
Yeah, I got mine.
Okay.
Okay. Well, already exists.
Joe Hendrickson, do you have your copy? I guess not. Or maybe yes. I don't know.
Are these the same?
I think you did. Yeah.
Yeah, they're identical. I
Oh,
just got done saying it was giving me trouble to get the first copy out there, so I went and did it again, and then both of them showed.
okay, okay. Yeah, I got it.
All right. We'll call it quits for the night, unless somebody has another issue or something to come up real quick.